Hey students, today this video is about page 281 in your grammar book. So make sure you have your book open. I'm going to kind of work through exercise A with you so you can go ahead and check your work with it. It's a pretty simple concept and idea, but we're coming kind of to the end of the adverb unit, and so you're able to apply these concepts after you have learned what an adverb looks like and how to find it in a sentence. Now, how do we use it the best way possible? Okay, on page 281 it says placing adverb modifiers. So let me just kind of give you an overview. Okay, we've talked about all of these things, these three things, and an overview of how they work with adverbs. Okay, so adverbs, these are the three forms that an adverb can come in, as well as adjectives, if you remember from back then as well. They can be one-word adverbs. Okay, so that's like the ly words, magnificently, beautifully, you know, all those ly words, especially, and time words, you know, yesterday, tomorrow. So adverbs can come just as one word. Adverbs can come as phrases, specifically prepositional and infinitive phrases. Okay, on the bus, in the hall, around the corner. Okay, those are prepositional phrases. Infinitive phrases, remember, they kind of answer the why question. I am going to study to get a good grade, to make sure I follow the recipe, I have it in front of me, okay, to, drawing a blank, I can't think of another one, okay, but it's to plus a verb, and they are the phrase versions of adverbs. And then you have the clauses that are introduced by the subordinating conjunctions. Hopefully you still have your little note card that has all the subordinating conjunctions on it: since, before, because, after, as if. That's just, you know, there's a whole bunch of them. But this is the forms that adverbs can come in. Now on this page, most of them are going to be like prepositional phrases. There are a few clauses on here, so just kind of I'll help you see the difference between them. But the first step is being able to find where they are, okay? It says in point 2, because what we're doing is we're trying to find the best place in the sentence for adverbs to go, is they're usually placed after the word that they modify, but point 3 says place adverb modifiers as close as possible to the word they modify. Now, if I can go back to adjectives, the best way to use adjectives in a sentence is to place them right next to whatever they're describing. Adverbs can go in different places in the sentence. They can go at the beginning, they can go at the end, they can go right next to the verb. So they have a little bit more flexibility, but adverbs still should be placed as close to whatever they're describing as possible. Whether it's a phrase or whether it's a clause, one word usually will go right next to them. But let's look in these sentences and try to find the phrase or the clause first, and then where should it go in the sentence, okay? So look at exercise A with me. I'm just going to kind of walk through these with you. Number 1 says, I saw rainbow trout jumping as the sun came up in White River. Now, these are actually, you know, kind of funny if you read them just as they are, because they've got the phrase in the wrong spot in the sentence. It's a prepositional phrase, okay? So I'm kind of giving you a chance to look for it. I want you to circle it. It's the phrase is in White River. So go ahead and circle it, in White River. And so what is actually in White River, okay? In the context right now, it's saying the sun is in the White River. Well, that's obviously ridiculous, so it would not be. It shouldn't go at the end of the sentence. It should go somewhere close to the trout. That's what is in White River. So go ahead and kind of draw you a little arrow to point it to where it should go in the sentence. So actually the sentence should read like this. I saw rainbow trout jumping in White River as the sun came up, okay? And just jumping all in the river. Number 2, I'm going to read the sentence. I told Mother that I would be late for dinner on the telephone. Find the phrase. I'm giving you a second to look. It's a prepositional phrase. That's the one we're looking for. And it is on the telephone. On the telephone. Circle it. And if you want to pause the video and like just go ahead and go through the sentences and find all the phrases or the clauses, that'd be fine. And then, but I'm going to just kind of walk through it one step at a time. Okay, so what actually happened on the telephone? What was being done over the telephone? That's what you got to ask. Give me a second to think. I'm going to read the sentence again. I told Mother that I would be late for dinner on the telephone. Might not sound too complicated because we actually know what's happening. On the phone is when she told Mother, okay? I told Mother. So actually, it should go all the way towards the beginning of the sentence. It could go right at the beginning of the sentence, say, on the telephone, I told Mother that I would be late for dinner, or it can go right after Mother. There's kind of two options here. I told Mother on the telephone that I would be late for dinner. Okay, so two options there. Number 3, the runners discussed how to beat their rivals in the locker room. That was kind of funny because in this sentence, the prepositional phrase is in the locker room. Circle it, in the locker room. And right now, it's saying that they're beating up the rivals in the locker room. Like they're all meeting after the game and they're going to beat them up, okay? But that's not actually where what's happening in the locker room. That's what we need to find out. The discussion was what happened in the locker room. So again, it can be moved all the way to the beginning. In the locker room, the runners discussed, or right after discussed. The runners discussed in the locker room how to beat their rivals, okay? So no beating was happening in the locker room. The discussion was happening in the locker room, okay? And you can see how if you move that prepositional phrase, it changes the sentence. It changes what actually happened or is supposed to happen. Okay, number 4. Caleb told us about the recent nuclear explosion in the physics lab. Prepositional phrase, in the physics lab. And what happened in the physics lab? Well, right here, the explosion happened, but we don't want that to be the case, so move it to the beginning of the sentence. In the physics lab, Caleb told us about the recent nuclear explosion. Okay, so the thing that happened in the physics lab was the conversation that Caleb was having. Again, it paints a very different picture depending on where you put this phrase. Number 5, she bought an old book written by Beatrix Potter in the used bookstore. Okay, and again, it might not sound weird to you, but there's actually 2 different situations that we have here. The phrase that you're looking at is in the used bookstore. Circle it, in the used bookstore. Now, 2 things could have happened in the used bookstore. Either Beatrix Potter wrote a book, or she bought a book. So what actually happened in the used bookstore? Did she buy a book while she was there, or did Beatrix Potter write a book in the bookstore? In this context, we need to move the phrase again to the beginning of the sentence to say that in the used bookstore, she bought an old book written by Beatrix Potter. Okay, so the buying was what was happening in the used bookstore. Number 6, trying to move along quickly. I used a sorry for my trip to India on my aunt's sewing machine. Try to find the phrase. It's a prepositional phrase. On my aunt's sewing machine. On my aunt's sewing machine. Circle it real quick. And again, I think you're probably getting the idea of it. What was happening on my aunt's sewing machine? I sewed the sorry. So you can say, I sewed a sorry on my aunt's sewing machine for my trip to India, or just move it all the way to the beginning of the sentence. Okay. Number 7, Tim found a picture of Grandpa as a boy in the dresser drawer. Find the phrase. I really want to make sure you're getting the habit of at least finding the phrases. In the dresser drawer is the phrase, and what was happening in the dresser drawer? Well, Tim found a picture in the dresser drawer of Grandpa. Well, actually, it needs to be kind of moved. Tim found in the dresser drawer a picture of Grandpa. Okay, number 8. The teacher mentioned on Friday we would see a special film. Look for the phrase, the only one, on Friday. On Friday, circle it. Now again, this one can go two places. You just have to decide what happened on Friday. Did the teacher mention something on Friday? Or would the film be on Friday? Is the teacher talking on Friday? Or is the film showing on Friday? That's what you got to decide. If the teacher's talking on Friday, then put it over there with the teacher. On Friday, the teacher mentioned so-and-so and so. Or, if you want the film to be happening on Friday, move the phrase to the end with the word film. The teacher mentioned we would be watching a special film on Friday. This one is one where it could be unclear to the reader what is actually happening on Friday. Think about if I were to send a memo out, or the secretary were to send out a letter to the staff, and she puts a phrase like this in the middle of a sentence, nobody's really going to know what happened. When is something actually supposed to happen? Because remember, English is about communicating clearly and effectively, and if you make sentences like this, where you've got the adverb phrase or clause in the wrong spot in the sentence, you're not communicating clearly and you can't be effective. That's why this is so important. Number 9, 2 more please. I heard about the massive snowstorm on the radio. On the radio is the phrase, and so you got to say, what happened on the radio? Right now, it's saying there was a snowstorm on the radio. Like, they got the radio and it's snowing on it. I don't know, it's weird. Move it again to the beginning of the sentence. I heard on the radio about a massive snowstorm. Okay. And then the last one, number 10. This one actually doesn't, we're not looking for a prepositional phrase anymore. Now we're looking for a clause. Okay, so you're looking for one of those subordinating conjunctions. I'm going to give you just a second to look for it. Okay, so the clause begins at before, kind of right in the middle of the sentence, and it goes to America. So circle before he came to America. That's the phrase, clause. It's a clause this time. Before he came to America. Okay, so now let me read the whole sentence. Mr. Olson learned to speak English before he came to America in a private school. So what happened before he came to America? What was happening before he came to America? Well, he learned English, okay? That's one of the options. So you would move it to the beginning of the sentence and say, before he came to America, Mr. Olson learned to speak English in a private school. Or you can actually move it to the end of the sentence. Mr. Olson learned to speak English in a private school before he came to America. It just doesn't need to go in the middle of the sentence. All of this might seem like, what is the difference? But hopefully I've tried to explain that depending on where you put the phrase or the clause will determine what is being described, what is being affected by the phrase or the clause. And you just have to be attentive. You just have to pay attention, because again, whatever's going on in your mind might not translate to your paper or your computer or whatever you're writing your information down on. And then when the person that is reading it reads it and they don't know what's actually going on in your mind, they won't get the same thought that you were trying to portray unless you are clear about these certain things like this. Okay. For exercise B, it just says to write a few sentences. I'd like you to do that, but I would like you to maybe comment on this post 1 or 2 of your sentences. You can do all 4 of them, okay? I'd like to read some of your stuff to make sure you guys are still out there, all right? So let me know if you have questions. The next few pages kind of are self-explanatory, but if you do have questions about a certain page and you need me to make a video on it or something, let me know, and I'll try to get that out as soon as possible. Have a great day.